I would really like to prefix this video by saying that the editing process for this will be long and hellish. Hey everyone, Dan here, and welcome to a video that I'm going to regret actually making. I can guarantee you that. It's my yearly film ranking, so every film that I watched in 2024 ranked from worst to best, all 161 of them. So if you recall, over the past few years on the channel, so for 2020, 2021 and 2022, I did these, yearly roundups of all the films that I watched in a particular year, all from, different genres and styles and eras and such. And I'd rank them all from worst to best. I'd give a little 1 or 2 sentence review and then move on, and it was very quick fire and whatnot. I didn't do it for 2023 because I did the monthly rankings instead, whereas, a bit of a change of pace. I could go more in depth each month on the films that I watched, but then this year I didn't do that, so I'm doing this one instead. Now, I really don't want to waste time in this intro because there's that many films to cover, but I will link in the description Letterboxd, which is where I rank and review and rate and log every film that I watch, because everybody does it these days pretty much. And also I will link any videos where I've talked about some of the films on this list in more depth, because I've talked about a lot of these films before, so I'll link, if you want more in-depth thoughts on certain films, I will try and link as many videos as I can. But with all that said and done, let's crack on with the video. So the posters can go just there, and let's kick it off with 161, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. This film is an embarrassment to sit through, and it's just awful. 160, we've got Battle for the Planet of the Apes, again, another really poor finale to the series, for the original Planet of the Apes films. It's just a damp squib of a film. There's hollow spectacle, nothing here story-wise. It's just a nothing film. 159, I've got Spectre, for me the worst of the James Bond films. I just cannot stand this film, and it's the worst of both worlds, where it's simultaneously boring, dull, drawn out, but it's also, thanks to the story, the narrative, the direction, the filmmaking, it's also really pretentious, and it really rubs me the wrong way. 158, we've got Unfrosted, Jerry Seinfeld's new comedy, where, early this year he was whinging about how comedy's ruined nowadays, but then, ironically, he goes and makes the most actively unfunny film I've ever seen in my life, with a wasted concept and nothing material in terms of the jokes. They're so safe, bland, predictable, and it's actively not funny, and that's the biggest joke of it all. 157, another Nightmare on Elm Street sequel, the 5th film, The Dream Child. It's cheesy, it's daft, it's not remotely serious. The filmmaking's quite poor, the story's just so daft. There's some really dumb choices in this film, although I think some of the character beats and some of the kills are pretty good, but that's about it. That's why it's not lower. 156, the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes reboot with Mark Wahlberg, who pretty much sleepwalks his way through this film, and I don't blame him. It's just such an uninspired, unimaginative reimagining of the original classic. 155, the iconic Ed Wood film, Bride of the Monster. Bela Lugosi's a lot of fun, but other than that, it's just crap. And when you watch it on a random Thursday night, it's just not very enjoyable. 154, Madam Web. Everyone knows why this film sucks, but I've kind of forgotten about it. Yeah, it's not absolutely horrendous. There is some ironic appeal with how so bad it's good it is. But honestly, I've just kind of forgotten about it. 153, the cinematic masterpiece Buster, starring Phil Collins. It's so good that I fell asleep watching it. That's all you need to know. 152, A Field in England. This is a really weird one where I just didn't get into it. I like some of the things like Reece Shearsmith's in it, so that's great. The black and white cinematography is cool, the historical setting's alright, but it's just a really weird, trippy, bizarre film. I didn't get it. 151, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, another really poor Apes sequel where the first half of the film is just a rehash of the original, even with a discount Charlton Heston. And then the second half turns into this weird story about underground religious mutants who worship an atomic bomb as a god, and it's just like, what is this film? 150, Predator 2. It's not an awful film, it's not poorly made, but it's just everything that this film does, the original film does way better. It's much richer and more thematically more interesting and more subversive, and there's just no reason for this film to exist. It doesn't do anything else of note, anything new. 149, Killer's Kiss, an early Stanley Kubrick film. It's not awful. It looks nice. It's well shot. There's some good sequences like the boxing and the ballet scene, but the whole crime thriller story is just very bland and predictable and just quite generic. And it's not the most engaging, and I just didn't really care for it that much. 148, The French Dispatch. It got even worse for me on a rewatch, to be honest. And after watching through other Wes Anderson films, I know that he can do better than this, and I don't enjoy this film. It's just pure style over substance. 147, The Godfather Part 3. It feels more like a parody of the Godfather films rather than the genuine article. It just feels so much tackier and cheaper and doesn't add anything of value to the first film. It just feels like a pointless legacy sequel. 146, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. I can barely remember more than 2 things that happened in this film. And it's for me where the original Apes films started to run out of steam. 145, Alien Romulus. I know a lot of people quite like this one, but personally for me, I really didn't enjoy it. I mean, it's well put together, you know, the practical effects and the production design, but overall it sticks so closely to the formula of the first two that it just feels so safe and corporate, and it rubs me the wrong way of how unambitious it feels. 144, Chariots of Fire, a very bland, stuffy, very just pretentious film that it's one of those Best Picture winners that just feels like it's saying a lot when it's not saying anything of note. Yeah, the music's iconic, the running scenes look very good and they're well photographed, but overall it's just a really stuffy film that I just cannot connect with it on any sort of genuine level. 143, Joker Folie à Deux, which is such a misguided film. It doesn't work in any sort of way, whether it's as a musical, it doesn't work. As a sequel to the first Joker film, it doesn't work. As a story in its own right, it doesn't work. 142, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Again, another baffling film which just turns the Mad Max films into pretty much a cartoon. You know, you've got Tina Turner as the villain. You've got the Thunderdome, which is basically just like a bungee jumping arena. You've got the bit where Max teams up with all the kids and it just turns like Peter Pan for some reason. And it's just like, it's a bizarre film, but again, it feels very distinct and memorable as opposed to some of the bland stuff I've had to talk about already. 141, Maestro. If it wasn't for the fact that this was in the Oscars race, I wouldn't have watched it because it's, again, like Chariots of Fire, thinks it's saying a lot when it's really not saying a whole lot at all. 140, Mad Max, the original. I wasn't really taken on the original Mad Max, to be honest. I just thought it was a bit, I didn't quite get sold on the world, and I know it's quite low budget, but I just wasn't really sold on this film, and I think it's more just like more not my cup of tea, really. 139, Bad Times at the El Royale. This is a film where if I didn't have Letterboxd, I probably would have forgot I even watched it because it just feels like a bit of a generic Tarantino kind of knockoff. 138, Baby Driver. I know people don't agree with me on this, but it's Edgar Wright's weakest film, pure style of a substance. I've talked about it before. 137, The Hateful Eight. Tarantino's weakest film, another famous director, but yeah, it's well made, you know, well shot, great actors, great score and whatnot. And I could see where this could, you know, be a great film, but overall, it's just way too long, and it doesn't really have, for me, the substance to warrant a 3-hour runtime. It just drags on and on and on and on. 136, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, another Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. It's all right. This one's kind of entertaining, but this is where I think the Nightmare films start to go off the rails a bit, where they kind of start to get a bit cheesy and the threat isn't really there. Speaking of campy fun, we've got a bit of a thing for the next few films. So 135, Plan 9 from Outer Space, the infamous Ed Wood film, but it is crap. This film is undoubtedly crap. But after watching the Tim Burton biopic and knowing some of kind of the in-jokes of this film and some of the iconic sort of infamous moments and whatnot, I enjoyed it a hell of a lot more and got a lot more entertainment and fun out of it. 134, we got Rambo 3, which is, again, a very quite cheesy 80s action film. It completely loses the point of First Blood. It's also very dated to the late 80s with the whole Soviet-Afghan conflict and whatnot. But as an 80s action film, it is quite entertaining, so I gotta give it that. 133, we've got The Blob, another, you know, iconic, infamous 50s B movie. Steve McQueen's in it, which kind of floored me a little bit. I was like, what's he doing here? But it's quite iconic. It's very daft, very stupid. But I had a lot of fun with it. 132, we have Commando, the Arnold Schwarzenegger action movie from the 80s. Again, it's a very typical film of the era. You know, it's fun, but I haven't really thought about this film a lot. 131, we've got A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, which this one's interesting because I don't really enjoy this film loads. It's not really my cup of tea, but I have a lot of respect for what this film does because as a sequel, it takes the series into a much different direction. You've got a whole different cast of characters. You've got a different kind of story. You've got Freddy being much darker and less jokey, a much darker tone overall. So there's some interesting subtext and whatnot. It's very unique and very different from the original, and it's not like a carbon copy. And I really respect that bold swing in a different direction. 130, we've got the oldest film on this list, Nosferatu, the original iconic 20s film. And I'll be honest, I didn't really care for this film much. I found it a bit slow-paced, a bit meandering. I didn't really get into the story, and I think the technical limitations of the time, I think, really do hinder it. 129, The Fall Guy, a fun little action film from this year with Ryan Gosling, and it's about stunt people, which is pretty cool, but overall, it's fine, but, you know, I haven't really thought about it since I watched it. 128, Kung Fu Panda 4, the weakest of the Kung Fu Panda films for me. I enjoy this world and these characters, so I like it at the bare minimum, but that's what it is. This film's just doing the bare minimum, you know, whether it's with the story, the villains, the animation. 127, Holiday Inn, a classic 40s musical with Bing Crosby, and, you know, it's fine enough. You know, the song and dance numbers are good. It's a bit dated in part, and it's a bit just sort of typical, but yeah, it's fine. 126, Megalopolis, Francis Ford Coppola's latest film, and it is a fever dream of a film. It's so weird. It's well shot, it's well acted, it's got some interesting themes and ideas and an interesting kind of vision, and it is a product of vision, which I commend, and it's not just kind of corporate slop, which the last few films were. But I just came out of this film thinking, Who is this made for? 125, Rambo Last Blood. It's a decent end to the Rambo films, but it just feels so weird. It's almost like Rambo in a Taken movie, and then at the end it just becomes a darker Home Alone with the booby traps, and it's entertaining, but it's just a weird film. 124, Creature from the Black Lagoon, a classic sort of 50s creature feature. There's some great stuff, like the underwater scenes look amazing, the creature itself, amazing design and iconic. And it has a charm to it. It's not amazing, but it has a charm to it that I enjoy. 123, Pan's Labyrinth. I had to watch this for uni this time, not school. I'm sick to death of watching this film, and I could go another 10 years that I just need to see this film again. Anyone who's seen this channel for the past few years knows how much I just don't really care for this film. 122, Belfast, a film that ordinarily I probably would call generic Oscar bait, but you know what? I'm quite interested in this era of history with the kind of troubles in Ireland that it sort of explores. I like the sort of 60s vibe and whatnot. I think the filmmaking is quite interesting. The black and white, cinematography looks very nice. It's not awful. It's a decent film, I think. 121, Chicago. I feel like this is one that will probably grow on me a bit more over time, but I think obviously the story's great, the songs are iconic, and the vibe, like the 20s crime thriller vibe, I enjoy. But I think something about how it was directed and edited felt quite stilted and off to me, but that's something that people praise about the film, so I was like, am I missing something? So this could get better for me, I think. 120, A Fistful of Fingers, Edgar Wright's first film, his debut low-budget comedy western film, and yes, it's not great, but it has a charm to it, and you can tell his vision here from the word go. 119, B-movie. I was a little bit drunk when I watched this, but it's B-movie. It's amazing. 118, The Cat Returns, a fun little sort of spin-off from Whisper of the Heart with a Baron character, and the only Ghibli film I watched actually this year, but it's a decent film, if a bit all over the place and a bit madcap, and I wasn't quite on that wavelength. 117, Moonrise Kingdom, a decent Wes Anderson film. I like the kind of main story of Sam and Susie, their relationship. I think is really endearing. It's all the little extra bits on the film, like the Bruce Willis cop character and Susie's parents, and all that kind of stuff that isn't as interesting and just eats away time from the film. 116, Freebirds, the film where they go back in time to the first Thanksgiving to get turkeys off the menu. And a bit like Plan 9 from Outer Space, this is just one that I've just embraced the so bad it's good nature of it. It's just so stupid, and I love it to bits. 115, Bringing Up Baby, a classic 30s comedy with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. And they're fantastic in the film. I love them as actors and whatnot. And it's a decent film, decent little comedy. But to be honest, I found that a lot of the jokes were a bit tame and a bit safe, and I think they could have gone a lot further with it, and it just doesn't really stick in my mind. 114, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. It is ultimately a pretty generic action film, but I think Nick Cage, the whole meta angle with him playing himself, that does elevate the film a little bit. 113, Insomnia, an early Christopher Nolan film, which is a decent but pretty bog-standard crime thriller, but it's a well-made film, great performances, good atmosphere, some good tension in certain scenes and whatnot. 112, Interview with a Vampire. I know it's a bit of a cult classic, but it's not fully my cup of tea, but I like, certain stuff. I like the production design, the lighting, the costumes, the makeup on the vampires is really cool and whatnot. I do like the framing device of the kind of modern day interview, but I wish they'd gone further with some of those ideas. And 111, Mean Streets, an early Martin Scorsese film, and it's very rough around the edges, and I mean that in both a good and bad way. Bad because it's a bit underdeveloped with some of the characters and some of the story, but I think it's good because it has this rough, raw vibe to it that I think is really quite engaging and an interesting sort of time capsule of this era of America, in New York. 110, The Circus, a Charlie Chaplin film, and, it's fun. There's some great gags and whatnot, and it is, it's a charming little film, but I think it's a bit slow-paced and towards the middle and whatnot, and I think it probably would have worked better as a short film and not a feature film. 109, Diamonds Are Forever, the campest Bond film of the lot. Blofeld's in drag, Bond is in a moon buggy, he makes out with his own shadow, and it's absolutely amazing. Like, you're missing out. The people who don't like this film, you're really missing out, Returning to the Planet of the Apes now with 108, Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Of the original series, this is probably the best of the sequels, because it does something, since the original first one since then, to do something new and fresh with the franchise and, setting it in the modern day and having kind of fish out of water comedy, they're leaning into that. I think it's really fun. And yeah, it is a bit hokey, but it leans into it, so it's quite charming and entertaining. And then it becomes quite a dark thriller towards the end. And I just think it's honestly a really solid film. 107, Gladiator 2, a well-made film, great historical action blockbuster with some great action set pieces and great actors and whatnot and great performances. The main thing that holds this one back for me is it really didn't need to be a Gladiator sequel. I don't think it really justifies being a Gladiator sequel. It could have just been its own thing and worked just as well. 106, we have Rambo 4, or Rambo as it's just called. I think this is a good film. I think it's really dark, really brutal, and I think it's a really solid continuation, 20 years after the last film. The character stuff with Rambo, with these later films, I think is really interesting. And the dynamics with all the different mercenaries and the freedom fighters. It's just a really interesting character piece for Rambo at this stage in his life. 105, Luca. It's a fun little Pixar film recently. It's not nothing too major, but it's just a nice little film, great animation, nice Italy setting. It's just fun. 104, we have East is East, a kind of cult British comedy of the 90s and whatnot. I do like these kind of British comedy films of the 90s and whatnot. I enjoy the vibe. I think it's got great humour. I like the way it kind of plays on sort of certain cultural sort of tensions of that sort of era, and, you know, plays on it in a humorous way. I think it's kind of, you know, an interesting perspective and whatnot, and I quite like it. 103, we have Deadpool and Wolverine, which, you know, it's not amazing, but it was a hell of a lot of fun, and it's really stuck with me. I learned a lot of the jokes and a lot of the moments and gags, and, you know, just the fun experience that this film is. 102, Moulin Rouge. It's a bizarre, trippy film that is so bonkers and madcap, and again, I wasn't fully on board with it for a lot of it, but the high points, like a lot of the song numbers, and the actual story overall, I think are really, really strong. 101, That Christmas, a recent Netflix animated film written by Richard Curtis, and, you know, it's got this kind of like charming, like British vibe about it, like a, you know, Love Actually or whatever, but, you know, for kids and whatnot. And it explores like an interesting perspective on Christmas and some interesting ideas and whatnot, and I just like the general fun vibe of the film. It was a nice little film to watch over the Christmas season. And cracking the top 100, we have Chicken Run, which is just, it's Chicken Run. It's iconic, it's class, it's not perfect, but it's just, we love it. 99, we have Final Destination, which is a pretty fun little film. Yeah, it's a bit cheesy and very early 2000s cheesy in some of the acting and effects and whatnot, but I think the concept is really cool. The whole concept of how the people are killed are really cool, and how it plays on these kind of primal fears that everyone has. I think you can really easily connect with this film. Number 98, we have Barbie. I just want to preface this by any of the dudes watching, we're going to be okay. The film does not hate men. We're going to be all right, okay? Yeah, it's not perfect. I think the script gets a bit messy towards the second half of the film. But yeah, I think a lot of what this film does is really interesting, some interesting ideas and whatnot. And overall, it's funny, it's got great music, it's got great production design, great, you know, visuals, and just, it is entertaining, even if it's not perfect. Number 97, we have Rise of the Planet of the Apes. You know, it's the first of the modern ones, and I think it's a solid film. I didn't maybe need some of the prequel stuff that this film does, you know, some of the backstory and whatnot, but it is really strong, and especially towards the second half, it gets really, really good. Number 96, It Happened One Night, an old, you know, 30s, you know, rom-com with Clark Gable, directed by Frank Capra. It looks really good. It's a really well-directed film, and yeah, it's a great moment, some charming actors, some charming little moments and whatnot. Does sort of teeter off towards the end, in my opinion, just kind of get a bit wishy-washy, but I think it's a solid little film. Number 95, Fantastic Mr. Fox. It's a fun, charming little film, great animation, but it's not one of the best films ever made. Number 94, we have Videodrome, which is a weird David Cronenberg film. It's got some interesting ideas and how it kind of plays on kind of fears of, you know, graphic, disturbing content in like the early 80s and whatnot, but it's just so, it's weird and gory and just really nasty and whatnot. Number 93, we have Fish Tank, a kind of British slice of life sort of kitchen sink drama. It is really cool, really well shot, I love the aspect ratio and whatnot. And I think it has a charming kind of low-key vibe about it, even if the story is a bit kind of not the most pleasant viewing, is it? At number 92, we have Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the best of the Sonic the Hedgehog films. It's just a fun time. Number 91, we have Roman Holiday, a classic 50s, you know, golden oldie with Audrey Hepburn, love her, and Greg Peck in Rome. Great location filming. It's just a really sweet little story. Number 90, we have Dream Scenario, a really bizarre little Nick Cage film with a really cool concept. You know, he appears in people's dreams and he becomes a celebrity. Great concept, plays that really well and really creatively. Nick Cage is giving a great performance and whatnot, and it's just a really interesting little film. At 89, we've got Deadpool 2, which I think is probably the best of the Deadpool films, I think, because of how it's not restricted by any of the sort of origin story bagging, and it just becomes a, you know, really great, solid Deadpool adventure with great action, great heart. It's got all the humour, swearing, violence and whatnot that you want from the Deadpool movies, and it's just fun. Number 88, we have Wonka, a really fun, imaginative, quite, you know, almost like festive film. You know, it came out sort of around the Christmas season, and just a really fun little film and an interesting, you know, just enjoyable take on the Willy Wonka story and universe. Number 87, we have Beetlejuice, another legacy sequel from this year, but one that I was quite anticipating and honestly didn't disappoint. Yes, it's very chaotic and messy with a lot of the plot and whatnot, but overall, I kind of enjoyed the chaotic energy, and also it's got great actors, great performances, great practical effects and visuals, and it's so creative and fun and wacky, and I really enjoyed it. At 86, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which is, again, I love the Guardians trilogy. This is probably the weakest for me. I think some of the humour is a bit over the top. I think sometimes it can detract from certain characters, don't feel as important this time, like Drax and Mantis, but overall the highs with Gamora and Nebula, and especially Star-Lord and Ego, are incredibly impactful, and Yondu as well. 85 is Corpse Bride, another Tim Burton film, a very charming little stop-motion film, you know, fun songs, fun animation, you know, it's great visually, and it's just a really simple but endearing little story. 84, I've got the original James Bond film, Dr. No, which I've come around on massively since I used to think of it as very bland and vanilla and just kind of setting up the formula, but no, I think it has its own identity. It's very Ian Fleming Bond. Sean Connery's amazing, Ursula Andress is fantastic. It's got a great, almost detective mystery vibe to it, and I love the locations, I love the cinematography. It's a very nice looking film, and it's just got a really great vibe to it overall. At 83, we've got Furiosa, the latest Mad Max film, and it's a really solid film. It really expands the Mad Max universe in interesting ways. Great characters, amazing villain, great actors, great action sequences and whatnot, and I love the world building, and it just adds a hell of a lot of texture to George Miller's Mad Max world. 82, we have Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, a really solid Edgar Wright film. It's a really madcap, bonkers, but really fun, zany film. Number 81, we have Shrek. Do I need to say more? It's Shrek. Everyone loves it. It's just great. Number 80 is Dog Day Afternoon. Now, this is one of the first of a few films that I'll talk about where I felt like I need to rewatch it to fully appreciate it, because it's a very uniquely made, it's a brilliant 70s thriller kind of hostage situation. It's a great film, but it's a very uniquely made film. It's very, you'll know if you watch it, it's not a conventional film in a sense, and I think I need to rewatch it to kind of fully appreciate that. Number 79, we've got Kill Bill Volume 2. For me, the better of the two Kill Bills, I think, because you get more of that emotional anchor, you get to see more of Bill and that kind of dynamic with the bride, and I think you get some great, more gritty fighting scenes. Even if it's not as iconic as the first film, I think this one is much better personally. Number 78, we have Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, which is such a fun, pulpy film, great adventure with all this ensemble cast and the kids coming together to defeat Freddy. But Freddy is still menacing in this film. Even though he is definitely jokey, he's still menacing and he's still intimidating. There's some brilliant set pieces and kills, and it's just a gorgeous film, and it's just really entertaining. In a similar vein, number 77, we have Lisa Frankenstein, which came out this year, and it's such a fun, twist on a classic Frankenstein sort of story with it kind of set in the 80s, kind of a throwback to an 80s, 90s sort of, kind of teen, coming-of-age rom-com kind of story. I don't know, I just found it really fun, zany, creative. 76 is The Man Who Haunted Himself, which is a very underrated, British thriller. A phenomenal performance from Roger Moore, and it's just a really interesting psychological sort of thriller. It's a bizarre film, but I loved it. 75 is Doom Part 2, which I think is an improvement over the first. You've got amazing action scenes. It looks stunning, great acting, from Timothée Chalamet and Austin Butler, great performances and whatnot. There's so much here, but I feel like I didn't, again, a bit like Dog Day Afternoon, I didn't fully get everything because it is such a rich, dense film. Number 74, Suspiria. It's a fantastic, iconic 70s horror film. It's a gorgeous looking film, so many striking visuals and colours and whatnot, and it's a solid, mystery film that, kind of unravels and whatnot, and it's really solid. Number 73, we have All That Jazz. Again, another one that I feel like this one I definitely need to give another go, because I don't think I was prepared for how unconventional this is. The great performances, a great story, great musical elements to it, but it is such an unconventional and very vulnerable film that I didn't really expect, so I need to give this another shot, I think. Number 72, we have Edward Scissorhands, another Tim Burton film, one of his better ones, I think. I think it's very interesting, some interesting ideas and themes about what you can read into it, and it's communicated through great visuals, great contrasting visuals, the kind of suburban stuff and the whole gothic expressionist sort of stuff. Great humour, and also it's very tragic towards the end, and it's really, really compelling stuff. Number 71, we have The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, a classic sort of John Ford Western film of the day. I really enjoyed this one. It's great from Jim Stewart, John Wayne. They're kind of contrasting personalities. I think it's really fun to watch and whatnot. And it's just a really solid Western. Number 70, we have Goldfinger. It is a great Bond film. Everyone knows why Goldfinger's iconic. It's just, it's iconic. Number 69, hey, Last Night in Soho. An Edgar Wright film that I get is flawed. It's not perfect, but I really connect with a lot of what it's going for. At 68, we have the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula film from the 90s, the Gary Oldman one. But it's pretty simple. It's not too complicated. It's pretty much just a retelling of the Dracula story, the Bram Stoker Dracula story. But it's done just really well. It looks gorgeous. Great production. The visuals are great. The performances are great. And are iconic. Number 67, In Bruges, a great sort of dark comedy. You got Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson. It's a great dark comedy. Some dark elements, but done in that comedic way. Those two bounce off each other really well. I love the setting of Bruges and whatnot. And it's just a really fun little sort of thriller. Number 66, we have Klaus, a recent Netflix animated Christmas film that I thought was really great. I think it was a really fun twist on a lot of Christmas sort of traditions and tropes and whatnot, and done in a really interesting way with gorgeous animation, great visual storytelling. 65, we have Who Framed Roger Rabbit, a classic animated live-action hybrid. That stuff, the technical stuff, is phenomenal. Judge Doom, he's a fantastic villain. Eddie's great protagonist. It's just great visual storytelling in this film, and it's overall just a blast to watch. It's so much fun. Number 64, we have Asteroid City, one of my favourite Wes Anderson films. Unexpectedly, I didn't really expect a lot from this, and I was really surprised at how the high points of this film are really high. It's such an interesting film with some of the ideas and whatnot, but it's also a really entertaining film and just a great vibe overall. Number 63, Kinds of Kindness, Yorgos Lanthimos' recent anthology film, Dark. You know, it's an interesting, very interesting film. I think the first two stories are fantastic and really compelling and just really engaging, and it looks gorgeous. It's brilliant filmmaking. But the third one, I wasn't as fond of. Number 62, The Commitments. It's basically just people in Dublin making music. That's the whole film, and honestly, it's just a fun film, fun vibe. I love the acting, and I enjoy watching it. It's just a comfort watch, really. Number 61, Sightseers. It's a film about a Romy couple who go on a camping holiday, and they're also serial killers, and it's like basically like a horror comedy slasher film but set in the UK, and it's just fun. Like, that sounds really weird, but it's fun. It's got that kind of Edgar Wright charm because he was a producer, and it's just got that charm and that fun quality that I just enjoy the film. Number 60, we have Mad Max Fury Road, which is a bloody amazing film. It's basically just one long action scene. It's such an interestingly told story. I love Furiosa as a character, the action set pieces visually, it's just gorgeously done, and again, it's a great return to the series, I think. Number 59, we have Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, I believe that the full title is, but yeah, overall, a fantastic film. The whole one-shot thing is amazing. The story of the Michael Keaton character, you know, he's a fading actor. I love his character exploration. I think it's really interesting. And number 58, we have Poor Things, which is, again, another recent Yorgos Lanthimos film. He's cooking as of late. This film is it's so wild and imaginative. You know, the visual style of the film, the production design, the costumes, it's such a weird, abstract film, but I love how it looks. The makeup, it's amazing. Emma Stone's performance is phenomenal, like genuinely astounding me with how she was able to do all the things that she did. Plenty of really interesting ideas and through the characters, and it's just it's weirdly entertaining and just very thought-provoking, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Okay, now we've got the 9 out of 10 films and above, starting at number 57, Prisoners, Denis Villeneuve's, probably his best film that I've seen so far. It's a perfectly made film. It looks gorgeous, got a great, you know, kind of eerie, unsettling atmosphere. Phenomenal acting from Jake Gyllenhaal and especially Hugh Jackman. It's a very tense thriller film, but it's not the most entertaining film in the world, so it's a bit lower than it probably objectively would be. Number 56, Rear Window. Had to watch this for uni and didn't enjoy it as much. I didn't get as much out of it this time around, but I still think it's a phenomenal film, phenomenal thriller, and it's probably the Hitchcock film that has aged the best. Number 55, we have The General Way, Buster Keaton classic film, and I adore Buster Keaton films. I think he's so fun, and this one's iconic. You know, the train stuff is fantastic, and it looks gorgeous, and it's just a really entertaining film. There's something so earnest about his films. 54, we have The Big Lebowski, which is such a quirky, oddball little film, and it's such a great vibe, almost like a hangout film. You know, it's, you know, lovable, quirky characters, some great humour, a great kind of interesting ideas and themes, some great visual sequences, like the whole bowling dream sequence is bizarre, but it's just a fun vibe of a film. 53 is The Muppets Christmas Carol, which again, a bit like Rear Window, didn't get as much out of on a rewatch, but it's still a brilliant retelling of the classic Dickens novel. Number 52, we have Vengeance Most Foul, the recent Wallace and Gromit film, and I love it. It's one of my favourites of the series probably, and it's just a blast to watch. Number 51, we have A Streetcar Named Desire, an iconic film. I think I did a video on this film, you know, if you want to check that out for more thoughts, but overall the story is damn near perfect. I just think the only thing holding it back is the studio system that it was made. Number 50, we have Predator, the original Arnie film, and I love this film. You know, it's a great horror slash sci-fi slash action film. It plays with so many of these different genres and mixes them together in very subversive and interesting and fresh ways, and it's a very entertaining film. 49, we have All About Eve, another classic film of 50s Hollywood, one of the wittiest films you'll ever watch. A brilliant screenplay, so many great lines, fantastic performances from Betty Davis and Baxter, and the kind of ideas of like ambition and trying to reach that ambition. It's so brilliant, and like towards the end, like the sort of last 10-15 minutes, it all sort of clicks into place and you're like, oh, it's such a great end to the film. And number 48, we have Wes Craven's New Nightmare, the 10th anniversary of the Nightmare on Elm Street film series. I love how genius this film is. It's using the popularity of the Nightmare films and Freddy as a character for this evil entity in the real world to manifest, and it's, you know, the actors playing themselves, you know, like Heather Langenkamp, Robert Englund, Wes Craven himself, and it's just a brilliant, very reflective, meta take on the series. But at number 47, I've got the original Nightmare on Elm Street. It's such a classic slasher film of the 80s. Freddy is amazing, but it is still really creepy with how mysterious he is in this original film. Genuinely unsettling moments and kills, and it's just a fantastic film that I forever will enjoy because I'm very nostalgic towards it as well. And number 46, I've got the original Guardians of the Galaxy, which even over 10 years later, I still think holds up as a really fantastic film. You know, it's a great space opera sort of film. You know, there's ragtag misfits coming together. I really enjoy that. I love the world building of the galaxy, how the different threats they have to face and whatnot. And it's just got a hell of a lot of heart, great humour, amazing music, and just it's a damn good time. At number 45, we have The Godfather, the original, the classic, which I don't think is the best film ever made. It's fantastic. It's objectively flawless. But because of how rich it is and how long of a film it is, there's so much here that I don't think I quite got. So that's the reason it's not higher. At number 44, we have Past Lives, which is a really great little kind of chilled out film. You know, interesting exploration of love and relationships. It looks gorgeous, great acting, great score, and overall just a really sweet little film. At number 43, Le Samourai, the French New Wave film of the 60s. I love this film in this because I love the vibe of this film. I love Jeff as a character. Alain Delon plays him fantastically. The direction, the filmmaking, the music, this kind of almost like anachronistic tone that the film has. I love the vibe of this film. It's very much carried on that vibe, and it's just a really cool film. Number 42, we have The Cameraman, another Buster Keaton film, another why. I love Buster Keaton's films, and it's similar to The General. I love the humour, the set pieces, the stunts, the earnestness of the film and Buster's characters and whatnot. And I think the fact that he's a cameraman in this film, I kind of enjoy a bit more than maybe the train stuff in the General, but I still, it's Buster, you can't go wrong with Buster Keaton. Number 41, we have Charade, a great 60s thriller with Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. It's just a really great sort of film, you know, great music, great suspense, great humour, kind of like sort of dry humour and whatnot. And it's just a really compelling mystery to see unfold. Number 40, we have The Wild Robot, which is a recent DreamWorks film that came out, and it's just simple but really beautiful little film. And I love the voice acting, the characters, the animation is gorgeous and really unique, and it's just a really simple but really sweet, earnest little story. Number 39, we have The Fabelmans, which is Steven Spielberg's sort of autobiography kind of film, and it's fantastic. You know, it looks gorgeous. It's got a hell of a lot of heart, a hell of a lot of humour, and just this kind of exploration of it. You get, I do think you really get a sense of more of who Spielberg is. You get sort of glimpses of the inspirations of a lot of the iconic films that he's done, and it's just a really heartfelt film and a really heartfelt tribute to making films, and I love it. Number 38, we have Wicked, just a pure, fun, bombastic. It's just amazing. It's got great songs, choreography, acting, performances, characters, great story, and it defied my expectations just like it defied Gravity. That is a bad joke right there. Number 37, we have Kes, the iconic Ken Loach film of the 60s. It's a great, very gritty, grounded story, but it has a lot of humour, a lot of humanity, and a lot of heart to it, and it's just a lovely film. Well, not lovely, but you know what I mean. Number 36 is Octopussy, the most underrated and unfairly hated Bond film there is. At 35, we have Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. For me, the best kind of version of what the Mad Max world is. It's Max at its best. I think it's the stunts and the action at its best. I think it's the aesthetic at its best. Some brilliant thematic stuff, and it's just again, even though it's gritty and violent and a bit over the top, it's still got a lot of heart in this kind of post-apocalyptic world. At 34, we have the original Charlton Heston Planet of the Apes film. I think this is just fantastic. I think it's got an amazing atmosphere, brilliant story, amazing for its time, makeup effects on the apes. I think they look great and they're so expressive, and the set design is amazing, and it's so rich thematically, so many interesting ideas. The twist is iconic, so I think it's just such a compelling twist and adds so much to the film as it is. Number 33, The World's End. It's, for me, the weakest of the Cornetto trilogy, but I still love it. Number 32 is A Matter of Life and Death, one of the old Powell and Pressburger films, and I really loved how inventive and fun, creative and novel this film was. So many great concepts. It looks gorgeous. I love the kind of shift of black and white and colour and whatnot. David Niven, fantastic. Kim Hunter, some amazing performances, some great humour, and just a really heartfelt story. And it's really inspired me in a lot of creative, things that I've done recently. At 31, we have The Grand Budapest Hotel. For me, my kind of comfort Wes Anderson film. I can go back to this at any time, and I think it's a blast. I love the aesthetic, I love the vibe, I love the characters, the dynamic, and it's just it's like a really cozy film. Number 30 is Inside Out 2, a fantastic sequel to the original, expanded the world in very, in logical kind of ways, and overall was very creative, very funny, and very emotional. Number 29 is License to Kill, one of the best Bond films for me. I think it's just fantastic. Timothy Dalton is incredible. The violence, the dark tone, it's all just fantastic for me. Number 28, When Harry Met Sally, again a bit like Grand Budapest Hotel. It's a bit of a comfort watch for me. I just really enjoy going back to this one. I love its bits. It's just so funny. It's really smart, and it's just a really endlessly endearing and rewatchable film. Number 27, we have Logan, the no doubt best X-Men film that there is. It's so rich in detail, you know, it's so well made, so well acted, so emotionally charged, and just as a sort of finale to that era of X-Men films, it's pretty much damn near perfect. Number 26 is Cars, my childhood film. I don't care that it's this high up. I love it. I love it. Number 25 is The Holdovers, a modern classic for me. I think it's a beautiful story. It's great. It's got like kind of dark elements to it with some of the characters, but it's also got a brilliant sense of humour that I think anybody can enjoy this film. And the retro aesthetic is just the icing on the cake. Number 24, Lilo and Stitch, a modern classic Disney film that does not have any right to be as good as it is. It's so much fun. It's so creative and fun, and I love the kind of sci-fi elements with the human drama. But overall, it's such a mature, thoughtful film in that kind of human drama element, and I think it's so beautiful. Number 23, we have Trainspotting, a fantastic film that I absolutely love. This film. It's a cult, like, British classic. I love the vibe, the aesthetic, the music, all the performances, and overall just even though it is quite a grim, bleak story, I think the very hopeful ending of kind of Renton walking away from this unhealthy life and just kind of trying to start anew, I think that's really inspiring, and I adore this film so much. Number 22 is Paris, Texas. This is a fantastic film. It looks gorgeous. It's got a great, unique vibe about it, a great mystery regarding Travis as a character. It's a really engaging film to watch unfold. You're trying to figure out what's going on. And then when everything clicks into place, a bit like All About Eve, but I think greater than that, when it all clicks into place, I think it's just such a profound, like, gut-wrenching sort of resolution to all that's happened in the film, and it's phenomenally done. I don't want to spoil it, but just go watch it if you haven't already. Number 21, we have The Mitchells versus the Machines. This is just a blast from start to finish. It's such a lovely little wholesome story about this family on this road trip, and there's also robots and aliens and invasions and whatnot. It's just a really fun, energized, really funny film, but it's got a hell of a lot of heart, and I just adore it to bits. And considering the main character is a film fan, Katie is literally me. And our last non-10 out of 10 film, Star Wars, or Star Wars A New Hope. Endlessly fun. I love Star Wars. Who doesn't love Star Wars? It's amazing. And now for the top 19 films, the 10 out of 10 films. Starting at number 19, Skyfall, one of the best James Bond films of the lot, the best of the Daniel Craig era, a great sort of 50th anniversary film for Bond. It's got all the right elements, even though it does it in unique, different ways to what some of the other films do. It's still just amazing. Number 18, we have La Haine, a French film of the 90s, this sort of crime thriller film. It's such a brutal, like, kind of gritty film at points. It's really great though. It's got great humour, great characters. It looks stunning, the black and white and the cinematography and the composition, the framing and whatnot. It all looks gorgeous, but it's such a tense film at points, and it's just a brilliant story. Number 17 is The Godfather Part 2. This one, yeah, I didn't fully get everything, but that didn't matter because I think the story was so strong. The stuff with Michael in the present day and the broken relationships that, his family, losing like Fredo and Kay and whatnot, losing all that is fantastic. But also the prequel stuff with Vito as a younger man, and Robert De Niro plays him. It's such a compelling rise to power, and it's so compelling to see how it all connects in this film, all converges, and it's perfect. Number 16 is The Best Years of Our Lives, which it's such a heartfelt film. It's a great time capsule of the immediate aftermath of World War II and veterans returning home, and the different things that happen in their lives after that. Kind of the struggles, but also the positive stuff and the negatives, and it's just such a fascinating window into that time, and really heartbreaking at times, but it's just phenomenal. Number 15, we have The Red Shoes, another Powell Pressburger film, and if you're a fan of Whiplash, the Damien Chazelle film, please watch this, because this is basically that, just with ballet dancing instead of drumming. And even if you're not interested in ballet dancing, watch the film, because it's such a compelling drama about ambition and wanting to succeed, and then being pulled in different directions from some of the other people. It looks stunning. It's so ahead of its time in that way. The performances are amazing. It's so shocking at points. It's just such a compelling film, and I adore it to bits. Number 14, we have Inception, which is for me the best Christopher Nolan film. Yes, the dream stuff might be confusing, but when you've watched it a few times, like I have now, it makes a lot of sense, and it's a great concept. I love the action, I love the ensemble cast of characters, but the main core of Cobb and Miles' kind of fractured relationship, and Cobb grieving and getting over that grief, it's so winning and so emotionally satisfying towards the end. Number 13 is The Breakfast Club. I haven't watched this film in a good few years, and I rewatched it, and it's still just as good as I remember it being. It still holds up as such a strong drama. It's got great humour, great fun vibe about it and whatnot, amazing character stuff all across the board. And it's the best version of that whole don't put a label on yourself kind of story. It's the best version of that story. Number 12, Pulp Fiction. I love it. Most people love it, to be fair. Yes, it's very intricate, very well plotted, but it's just fun. Number 11, we have Ed Wood, which is my favourite Tim Burton film, and you know, again, it's a film about making movies, and you know, a really interesting and insightful and inspiring look at the life of Ed Wood, and you know, his passion to make movies even on a shoestring budget. It's just a really heartfelt look at his life. The stuff with Bela Lugosi and you know, Martin Landau is fantastic, great humour, and it's just a really uplifting little film, and I love it a bit. Number 10, we have Parasite. Finally got around to watching this, and it's phenomenal. You know, it is pretty much just a feature length inside of a 9 episode. It's got that great dark humour that I tend to love a lot. It's got amazing twists and turns. It's got amazing commentary on kind of class systems and whatnot. It's got great visual style and direction from Bong Joon-ho. Great performances. It's just overall just such a thrilling film to watch. Number 9, we have Hot Fuzz. I love it. You know, I've always loved it. I can quote it verbatim. I pretty much was doing that on this recent rewatch. Number 8, we have Wild Tales, a phenomenal dark comedy anthology film. Again, a bit like an Inside Number 9 series, because you get 6 short stories in this film, so it's basically a Number 9 series. And I love all 6 of them. I love the tone, the kind of themes of revenge and the dark side of human nature that kind of is amplified in these stories and whatnot. I think it's such a fascinating look, but it's also just done in a really fun, entertaining way. Number 7, we have Singin In The Rain, just pure, unfiltered joy in this film, with the songs, the dance numbers, Gene Kelly, Cosmo, the whole thing about 20s Hollywood, the whole story, it's so good and just puts a smile on your face every single time. And if you don't enjoy this film, like I wouldn't believe you. Number 6, we have Reservoir Dogs, my favourite Tarantino film, and it still remains that. I think it's one of those early films that got me into films, so it will always be special to me. But overall, I really enjoy this film this time, but in all different ways. I found so many new things to love about the film. Really annoying that this is not at number 6, but at number 5 we have The Sixth Sense, which after rewatching it has gone up so much in my estimation. I think it's such a brilliantly told ghost story. Bruce Willis and all the rest of the cast are fantastic, technically perfect, and the twist obviously is iconic, but the emotional resolution is what really makes this film what it is. I'm going to bash through these next few quickly because I've already talked about them at length on the channel. Number 4, we've got Sunset Boulevard, my favourite Billy Wilder film. I adore it to bits. I love the tone and I just love what it's going for. Number 3, It's a Wonderful Life, one of the absolute best Christmas film and just one of the most uplifting, beautiful, you know, films ever made. And number 2, we have Shaun of the Dead, which has always been the runner-up on all these lists and whatnot, and it's just my most rewatched film probably. But at number 1 this year is 12 Angry Men, which a classic that everybody knows and loves, and it's one of those that, you know, it might seem intimidating to kind of come to because it is such a well-regarded film that will it disappoint? Maybe a bit like The Godfather did. No, it won't disappoint. Perfectly made, perfectly shot, perfectly acted, perfectly written, and it's such a brilliantly human story that you can connect with in such an interesting way. You get a sense of every character. That it's such an interesting film throughout. It doesn't drag on. It's only about 100 minutes, so it's a great length, perfectly paced. Everything about this film is perfect. And with that, this video is done. It's long enough as it is. I'm going to bed. Good, see you later. Oh my god, I discussed Who Framed Roger Rabbit and didn't even mention Jessica Rabbit. Hey!